All right. Well, welcome to the show. No, just kidding. It's not a show. All
It
right.
is our show.
Yeah. So thank you so much for doing this with me, Rubina. I'm very excited to chat with you because you were a client earlier this year. I had the pleasure and privilege of redesigning your Shopify store. And in doing so, I got to know your business and it's so cool. So I just wanted to talk to you to get a behind the scenes and better understanding of how you started your business and how you got to where you're at today. So, how about we start with if you tell me a little bit about what your business is and why enamel pins?
Okay. Well, thank you for having me, Shelley. You did a phenomenal job on the website. Like everyone loves it. I love looking at it. It's very beautiful. So thank you for that. So I run the Gray Muse. I sell enamel pins, stickers, notepads. I have other products that I'm thinking about, but I initially started with pins. The business kind of started accidentally. Like it was just something, I was a crafter at that time. I used to do handmade cards. That was a hobby I had for 4+ years. And naturally, when you're into like crafting or like art, you navigate into other artist fields. And so um, one of the card makers was collecting pins, and I had never collected pins before. And I thought that was like the coolest thing ever. I didn't even know this world existed that people collected pins like representing. So I bought like all the pins that had to do with coffee, introverts. What ended up happening was I realized that there were no pins for card makers. And so that idea was born for me to um, create my own. And I had never designed before. So I just thought, well, I'll just keep it really simple. It just started that way. And so I launched my little collection and I was only telling my friends about it and my community of card makers who were not into pin collecting. It was just like that rare one or two person that collected pins. So it was very interesting because I think it was my passion, my excitement, and introducing a way for people to express that they're card makers that brought the Gray Muse to life. And so from there, it was just exciting to be able to channel my creativity through one medium. I did stickers only because it was just another way to express the same art, but it was like a small piece. Like it didn't cost a lot to be able to do that. But I kept with pins because it's so fun and there are so many people it connects me with, and I get to build different collections and like find people who like resonate with the collection. I learn a lot through the process. Like I have a huge floral and plant collection, like over 100 designs. And through that process, I got to learn so much about flowers, about herbs, about plants, and I'm still learning things. I have a new collection coming soon on birds. I don't know anything about birds, but I was like, I just want to do it. They're beautiful. And now I'm like, okay, will I become a bird watcher? I don't know, but it's
It happens.
exciting.
It
And
sneaks up on
yeah,
people.
yeah. So that's how I started, and that's how it's going.
Tell me about a little bit more about that launch. So you kind of under the radar, how did you share it?
It,
How did you sell it rather, if you weren't really sharing it with many people? Like what platform were you selling it on?
I mean, I was talking to like literally everyone about it. My brothers, my sister, my mom, like my best friends, and people who do like none of them collected pins. So they were just like, oh, that's cute. That's fun. Like you're doing something new. And in my family, I was known as someone who just like gets excited about new things and then it phases out. Like it was kind of like a joke. So, but I was like, it was so big in my heart that I just couldn't let it go. So what ended up happening, I think, looking back on it, it wasn't something I reflected on at that time or like what was happening or why it was working. Looking back on it was because I spent 4 years building different skills as a card maker. So I had to learn how to use Instagram, how to post photos, how to like stand out amongst all card makers, like and back then Instagram was amazing because you could see everyone's posts and comment, like the community was thriving. So when I started this account, I kind of used those skills and applied it to the business, but I kept it very simple. So I was like, well, usually people have a website, and I went straight to Shopify. Like I did my research. I didn't, um, you know, stay too long thinking, should I do Etsy? Should I do Shopify? I was like, let me just yeah, invest in myself. I usually go all in on myself once I'm like, I just want to see how this works. I could try it for a few months. And, I already knew how to use Instagram. I set up a new Instagram page. I invited my friends over. And then I had already learned how to do photographs with cards. I used to like set up props and like do like the whole like zoom in and focus. So I did the same thing with pins. And so it was mostly that excitement. I mean, looking back, I cringe at those photos, but it was a really good start for that time. It was 2019. Um, and the I didn't know what to expect. Even my brother, he had an Amazon business at that time, which he was trying to get me into, and I just couldn't. I was bored to death with it. So I was like, please let me just try this. So I ended up having making $5,000 from that weekend from 5 pins. And I
Wow.
think that changed my life. I mean, part of me thinks I got lucky, but also if you look at everything I did up to that point and like applied and focused, like it makes sense. But it wasn't expected. I wasn't relying on it. I was still thinking I'll go back to social work full time, like I was applying for jobs. So it was just something that I was willing to try and put my energy into, and it worked out. And then I just kept going. But I went through that cycle every month. Like every month, I'm like, I don't know if I'll be able to do it again. Maybe I just got lucky this time. And that went on. And then I realized I can't keep having these same thoughts over and over. And then I started to work with people to help me manage my inner thoughts, how I feel, like my confidence. So it took a few years, but now I'm like, okay, it's like I have a solid business. Let's just keep going with it.
Yeah, you absolutely do. But I do
Oh, thank you.
understand because it's like with any kind of business, you don't normally know exactly what to expect. Like you put it out there, you hope it's going to do great, but can't guarantee that. And that's
Yeah,
the stressful part.
definitely.
Okay, so I want to talk about you mentioned you learned how to stand out with your card making, and I feel like that's something that you do exceptionally well. Like you have such a defined style, aesthetic, like you can tell from 50 feet away, oh, that's Gray Muse. Like and it's also such a unique aesthetic. Like they look like pins I've never seen before. And I just want to kind of talk about or ask you about how did you figure that out? Like I feel like that can be such a challenge for people to figure out what's my unique take, what's going to make me different. And you really seem to have nailed that.
It took experimentation. Like I mentioned that if I look at my first photos, like I would cringe at it. And that's normal because as an artist, as a creative, like you look at your earlier work, you're like, oh, like I know so much better now. I pay attention to more details. Um, have more efficient processes, or I understand what's working, what doesn't work with my audience. So I like to keep in mind that I had to start somewhere. So at that time, with whatever knowledge I had, with whatever perspective I had, or like vision, I just started there. So like if you look at my earlier flowers, they're very basic. They didn't even have a name. It was just like flower pin because I'm like, well, it should just have petals and leaves and that's it. And then I started to study different flowers and I was like, okay, we'll start with, anemone or another flower like sunflower. So like some basic ones. Um, and so I would just kind of like dip my toes into it, start off really simple. And then over time, I would be like, oh, I want this like other details on it. And then the next version. So now if you look at my website, you'll see version 1, version 2. And that's me still openly experimenting with the style I want. So like last year, we finally did UV printing. So with enamel pins, it's very limited. If you look at most of the majority of pins, they're very simple. You have to keep a certain color within the lines. And so I like to master details of like, okay, this is how it's supposed to be done. These are my limitations, but these are new options. So when they introduce UV printing, they're like, yeah, we print all the colors at the same time. And that blew my mind. I'm like, we could print like actual artwork on pins now. And you'll rarely see that enamel pins. It's mostly for like people who do like comics or like, those kind of feels where it's like they want the full scene and they
Mhm.
have tiny little characters. And so they want like the colors to be accurate. So like you'll see it in very niche enamel pin industries where they'll have that. So, but like most pins, if you look up flower pins, they'll try to keep it very simple because of the production, the cost. But I didn't care about all that. I was like, this is the vision I've had. These were my limitations that I worked with before, and now I can do something different. So it was a huge risk for me because I had no idea if my audience would be like, what the heck is this? Some of them were like that, but it was a very small percentage. But I followed my heart and I was like, this is the vision I have. This is what, um, like I have to be really in love with what I create and what I offer. And I couldn't go back to the old version of myself that keeps things simple. So I just keep evolving and growing myself, and my collections come with me. So once I outgrow anything, I'll discontinue it, which is the process I've been going through this whole year, is just kind of discontinuing almost like a third of my products because it's like I've shed so much. Those products took me this far, but like the next version of myself is going to be something different. So I would say start with wherever you are and then look at over time, like where would you want to change? Where would you refine? I think one of the things that holds people back is like they think they're supposed to get it right the first time, or they're not allowed to make mistakes. One of my pins says it's not a mistake if I'm learning. So it's like those kind of reframes have helped me to keep refining the brand. Once I knew that I had a good brand, so I just wanted to make everything better. Some of them are really, really great the way they are. They're timeless, and there are other things that like finally I got the text collection the way I like it. So I'm like, okay, this is solid. So now I'm just expanding that collection in the same style, but it came with timing and experiencing and understanding myself as well and what I like, and understanding the details that go into the art, even for text. It's like the style, the size, the color. Um, yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so interesting. Like lots of little things that I can take away from that for sure. So when you said when I realized I had a good brand, like when was that and what made you realize that? I would imagine it was gradual, or was it that $5,000 sale of the pins the first time that changed your life that you
It was
realized
not
it?
in the
Or
beginning.
okay. Yeah.
I think there were stages of it, like, okay, there's potential. And then I finally now feel like, okay, this is like, it's unshakable confidence. I don't question it. Now I can focus my energy on like just building it and growing it. I think part of that came when I did the final branding last year with
Mhm.
Docs Design. Then the other part of that was when you did the website. Because like those were huge investments for me, but it's like it changed kind of like the energy of the business. And like, when they say like, I've done different branding over time, but it's like I finally got clear on it. Like, this is it. Now we're just gonna so what I started to do was refine each area. I couldn't invest in everything all at the same time. So I was like, let me just do branding because then I can change all the packaging. I can finalize all the kinds of collections I want. And then it was like, okay, websites next. That makes sense because it's a very aesthetic brand. So I wanted to, so I, ever since the website was done, I've been optimizing every aspect of the website and learning, where to reduce friction for customers, what customers like, um, what customers are looking for. And so now it's about optimizing the collections and making so I'm like retiring things that are just kind of sitting there. Like, yeah, they're great, but you also want to run a profitable business. So it's like trying to find that balance between I want to create everything, but also like I'm overwhelming myself and my customers. So let's focus on. So it's like kind of working on my business skills as well, like learning the data, learning what works, reducing the inventory so that you make it easier for the customer.
Let's talk about success. What is your definition of success? You kind of have talked about you feel like you're comfortable in your brand now, you have a great brand, you have unshakable confidence, which I really love that phrase. So what is your definition of success for your life and for your business?
Initially, I was fixated on money and how much money I made because what ends up happening when you're on Instagram, when you have a business, when you're looking at other people and you're still in the learning phase, is that you feel like you constantly have to catch up to others. Like I have to make my first six figures, my seven figures. Like that's only way that I'm going to be truly successful. I need to save this much money and be able to pay all my bills. And so, one of the things that I've learned through my journey, every time anyone says they want to start a business, I'm like, be ready to do a lot of inner work because you come face to face with yourself, your thoughts, like your greatest fears. And one of the things about me is when I notice a pattern within myself that it keeps repeating every week, every month, I'm like, I have to sit down and I have to look at it. And so when I became fixated on like achievement and like productivity, I knew this was a thing that I grew up struggling with because I was a straight A student, immigrant. My parents wanted me to do really well in school. You know, they didn't believe that art was like a real field to make money. They're still baffled by what I do, but they're like, you love it. You know, you're making money, so you're good. But initially I had to like reframe a lot of that for myself because I've learned that through childhood that, you know, art isn't a sustainable business. So the work that I was doing with myself was realizing that this is not who I want to be. I don't want to be focused on someone who's productive. I achieved a lot of things. I every time like I had my first 20K month, 30K month, 50K month. And then I went back to another like, okay, next milestone. And I was like, stop. We have to stop this. I have to love where I am. And I know I'm going to get there. So I know that I achieve everything I want. And so then what it became was success to me was I like my day. I like myself. I like spending time with my family. I'm clear on my values. Um, but most importantly, it was like I know who I am. I like nobody could say anything about me. I know who I am. I have integrity. Um, you know, I live the life that I want, that I like. And so that's why I introduced that sticker about like, I'm going to enjoy the space between where I am and where I'm going. And a lot of these phrases come out when it becomes like, this is the thing I'm going to focus on for the next season. So it kind of becomes an anchor point for me. And so that phrase, when I posted it, it resonated with so many people because it's such a relatable journey of like, I want to be someone who's productive and achieve things, but I also want to enjoy the process of getting there, you know?
Mhm.
Um, and so that helped me to change timelines, change expectations, be easier on myself, have more grace, compassion. And so I learned to slow down in the process. And slowing down for me looked like 2, 3 years of like, it's okay to rest, it's okay to take days off, it's okay to ask for help. I have 2 kids, so I'm like, I used to be hyper independent. I have to do everything. If nobody wants to help me, I'm going to figure it out because I can figure it out. Like I was that kind of person. So for me now, it's like I really have, you know, when time with just my kids, my family. Like I'm 40 now. My husband's 41, and we are just learning to drive. Like we've had our licenses, but we didn't need to drive in the city. And that's like the most exciting thing going on in our life right now, where he's been driving for a month. So now I'm going to start driving. And those are the things. It's like, yeah, the business will be there. I'll get to do it. I'll work on it when I want to. But I also have this life that I want to live. I want to like, it's for me, it's become important to be more present, to notice the little things. And that's what I also kind of channel into the brand. It's the little things, and it's, you know, it's pins and stickers, so it is little things, but also I think that's why people love that world when they come into it, because it's like I recognize everyone has different things they value and they appreciate little different things in their lives as well. And so um, that makes me happy with my impact too. And that's also feeds into feeling successful, that I'm making like a positive impact in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I really love that answer. Wrapping up, one last question. What advice do you have for someone that is just now starting their product business?
I would give the same advice to myself if I had started. Like, there's so much I spent time learning that, you know, there's always a possible way. Like, I'd rather change the questions that I'm asking versus like, this is not working. Why isn't it working? It's like asking yourself more powerful questions and starting to look for evidence that it's possible. So surrounding yourself with people who do have a successful product business, noticing what what it might be that's helping them to be successful. You know, it could be they're learning data, they're surrounded by, you know, like people that are doing similar things. They're working on themselves. So I would surround myself with people who are doing the thing that I want to do, being mindful not to compare because, you know, they're on a different journey, but it's more about looking at the evidence of possibility. I wouldn't have gotten this far if I hadn't been able to look at people who've achieved so much more than me. What I learned over time was that I wanted to do it my way, that it was important for me to go at my own pace, that it was important for me to look at my own capacity. Like as a mom, I can't go faster than like a man working on a Shopify business, you know, like we all have different capacities, different resources. So being able to look at that and then um, just kind of doing one step at a time. You can't really see how it's going to go, but like if you take one step, what did you learn from that? What was the information? And tweak based on that. I would say now I'm like in love with data. I love looking at metrics and analytics because before I was very intuitive. It would just be like, okay, I kind of think this will work, that will work. Um, and everyone's different. Some people might not be interested in that right away. So I would say start small. So you don't have to learn all the metrics right away, but just a little bit, you know. But I always think that you should be willing to at least experiment or try or go, you know, all in on yourself, even just a little bit, but just understand your capacity. What are you willing to risk? I'm a very big risk taker, so I'll risk even more, but that's usually because I've learned to trust myself and learn to understand like my intuitive nudges of like, let's try this. It may not go exactly the way I want, but there's something that I'm supposed to learn from that experience that will still help me in my business.
I love that. That was so inspiring. And seriously, thank you so much
Oh, of
for
course.
chatting with me today. I really found that really, really inspiring. And I'm just so
I'm so
grateful that I got
glad.
to work with you this year and kind of
Oh,
get into the Gray Muse world myself because it's a good place to be.
I'm so glad. Thank you.